Marcus Williams had always believed that becoming a father was the greatest blessing of his life. 10 years ago, when his wife Sarah told him she was carrying twins, he felt like the luckiest man alive. The pregnancy had been difficult, with Sarah spending weeks in bed rest, but when Emma and Ethan finally arrived, Marcus thought his heart might burst with joy. He remembered holding both babies in the hospital, one in each arm, marveling at their tiny fingers and the way they seemed to look right at him. Emma had Sarah's bright blue eyes, while Ethan had inherited what Marcus assumed were his own dark brown ones. The nurses commented on how beautiful the children were, and Marcus beamed with pride. From the very beginning, Marcus threw himself into fatherhood with complete dedication. He changed diapers at 3 in the morning, sang lullabies when the twins couldn't sleep, and spent countless hours reading them stories. As they grew older, he coached Ethan's Little League team and never missed one of Emma's dance recitals. Sarah often joked that Marcus was more devoted to the children than she was. While she loved them deeply, Marcus seemed to have an endless well of patience and energy when it came to Emma and Ethan. He would spend entire Saturdays building elaborate blanket forts, teaching them to ride bikes, or taking them on adventures to the park. The twins adored their father just as much as he adored them. They would race to the door when he came home from work, competing to see who could hug him first. Marcus would scoop them both up, one under each arm, and spin them around, until they were dizzy with laughter. These moments felt perfect to him, like everything in his world was exactly as it should be. As the years passed, Marcus noticed that the twins were developing their own distinct personalities. Emma was quiet and thoughtful, preferring books and art projects. She had a gentle nature and was always concerned about others' feelings. Ethan, on the other hand, was energetic and outgoing. He loved sports, made friends easily, and had a mischievous streak that kept Marcus and Sarah on their toes. Despite their differences, the twins were incredibly close to each other and to their parents. Family dinners were filled with laughter and chatter about school, friends, and dreams for the future. Marcus would look around the table at his beautiful family and feel overwhelming gratitude for the life they had built together. He worked long hours at his accounting firm to provide for his family, but he never complained. Every sacrifice felt worth it when he saw his children's faces light up on Christmas morning or when they achieved something they had been working toward. Marcus documented everything with photos and videos, creating albums and scrapbooks that captured their growing years. Friends and relatives often commented on what a devoted father Marcus was. His own father had been distant and critical, so Marcus was determined to be different. He wanted his children to always know they were loved, supported, and valued. He attended every school event, helped with homework every night, and made sure both Emma and Ethan knew they could talk to him about anything. The family had their share of ordinary struggles, of course. There were arguments about bedtimes, negotiations, over chores, and the occasional teenage attitude as the twins approached their 10th birthday. But through it all, Marcus felt confident in the strong foundation of love and trust they had built. He believed that no matter what challenges lay ahead, their family bond would see them through anything. The first crack in Marcus's perfect world appeared on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday evening. The twins were working on a school science project about genetics and heredity, and Emma had asked him to help her understand how traits are passed from parents to children. Marcus was happy to assist, remembering his own high school biology classes. They sat at the kitchen table with Emma's textbook open between them, looking at charts about eye color, hair color, and other inherited characteristics. Emma was particularly fascinated by the section on blood types, asking detailed questions about how parents with certain blood types could only have children with specific types. "Dad, what's your blood type?" Emma asked innocently, her pencil poised over her worksheet. Marcus thought for a moment. He had donated blood several times over the years and remembered the Red Cross cards he kept in his wallet. "I'm type O," he said. And Mom is type A, I think. Emma consulted her chart, her brow furrowing in concentration. That means Ethan and I should be either type A or type O, right? She asked. That sounds right, Marcus agreed, though he had never really thought about it before. The science of genetics had never been particularly important to him, beyond satisfying his children's curiosity. The next day, Emma came home from school excited about a blood drive that was being organized for high school students and their families. She had signed up to participate as a learning experience, and both twins were eager to find out their blood types. Marcus thought it was a great opportunity for them to contribute to their community while learning something new. On the day of the blood drive, Marcus accompanied the twins to their school gymnasium. The atmosphere was festive, with students and families chatting while they waited in line. Emma and Ethan were nervous but excited, holding hands as they approached the registration table. The process was simple and efficient. The nurses were kind and patient with the children, explaining each step as they took small samples for testing. Marcus watched proudly as his twins handled the procedure with maturity and bravery. Ethan barely flinched when the needle went in, and Emma asked thoughtful questions about how the blood would be used to help patients. Within an hour, they received their results. Emma was type A, just as the genetics chart had predicted. But when the nurse handed Ethan his card, she smiled and said, "You're type AB, young man. That's a universal plasma donor type. Very special." Marcus felt a strange flutter in his chest, but he pushed it aside. Genetics was complicated, and he figured there must be some explanation he didn't understand. Maybe Sarah's family had different blood types that he wasn't aware of. He congratulated both children on their participation and took them out for ice cream to celebrate their contribution to the blood drive. That evening, after the twins had gone to bed, Marcus found himself thinking about the blood types. He pulled out his laptop and began researching genetics and inheritance patterns. The more he read, the more uncomfortable he became. According to every scientific source he could find, two parents with type O and type A blood could not produce a child with type AB blood. Marcus spent hours going through website after website, hoping to find some exception or special circumstance that would explain Ethan's results. But the science was clear and consistent. For a child to have type AB blood, one parent must contribute the A antigen and the other must contribute the B antigen. Since neither Marcus nor Sarah had type B blood, it should have been impossible for Ethan to have type AB. Sleep eluded Marcus that night as questions swirled through his mind. There had to be a mistake somewhere. Maybe the blood test was wrong, or maybe Sarah had been mistaken about her own blood type. Perhaps there was something about genetics that he didn't understand, some rare exception that could explain this result. He told himself that he was overreacting and that there would be a simple explanation once he talked to Sarah. The next morning, Marcus approached Sarah carefully. He didn't want to alarm her or create problems where none existed. Over coffee, while the twins were getting ready for school, he mentioned the blood drive and the results they had received. "That's wonderful that they participated," Sarah said, stirring sugar into her cup. "I'm proud of them for being so mature about it." "Emma is type A, like you," Marcus said, watching Sarah's face closely. "But Ethan came back as type AB. I was just curious about that since I'm type O." Sarah's expression didn't change. She nodded absently while checking her phone for messages. "Genetics can be funny sometimes," she said. "Maybe he got it from your side of the family somehow." But Marcus had already researched his family's medical history the night before. His parents had both been type O, and his sister was also type E. Oh, there was no type B blood anywhere in his family tree that he could trace. He decided to be more direct. "Actually, I looked it up online," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice casual. "It says that type AB blood requires one parent to have type B blood. Are you sure you're type A? Maybe you should get retested." For just a moment, something flickered across Sarah's face. It was so brief that Marcus almost missed it, but he saw a flash of what looked like panic before her expression returned to normal. "I donated blood in college," Sarah said quickly. "I'm definitely type A. But you know how these things work, Marcus. Science isn't always perfect, and maybe there are things we don't understand about our family histories." Marcus wanted to believe her, but her response felt rehearsed somehow. He decided to let the matter drop for the moment, but the seed of doubt had been planted deep in his mind. Over the following weeks, Marcus found himself paying attention to details he had never noticed before. He began studying Ethan more closely, looking for physical resemblances that he had always taken for granted. While Emma clearly had features from both parents, Ethan's appearance seemed less obviously connected to either of them. Ethan had curly dark hair, while both Marcus and Sarah had straight hair. His build was different too, more compact and muscular than Marcus had been at that age. Even his mannerisms seemed distinct, though Marcus wondered if he was imagining things because of his growing suspicions. The doubt began affecting Marcus's daily interactions with his family. He found himself analyzing conversations, looking for hidden meanings in innocent comments. When Sarah mentioned running into old friends or staying late at work, Marcus wondered if there were things about her past that he didn't know. He tried to push these thoughts away, but they kept returning at quiet moments. During Ethan's baseball games, Marcus would scan the other fathers in the stands, wondering if any of them looked like his son. He felt guilty for having these thoughts, but he couldn't seem to stop them. One evening, while helping Ethan with his homework, Marcus found himself studying the boy's profile. Ethan was concentrating on a math problem, his tongue poking out slightly as he worked through the solution. It was an endearing habit that Marcus had always found charming, but now he wondered if it was a trait inherited from someone else. "Dad, are you okay?" Ethan asked, looking up from his worksheet. "You're staring at me weird." Marcus forced a smile and ruffled his son's hair. "Sorry, buddy. I was just thinking about how smart you are. You're really getting good at these math problems." Ethan beamed at the praise and returned to his work, but Marcus felt a stab of guilt. This innocent child had no idea that his father was questioning everything about their relationship. Ethan trusted him completely, looked up to him, and loved him unconditionally. The thought that he might not be Ethan's biological father was painful beyond description, but even more painful was the growing certainty that Sarah was hiding something from him. Her behavior had become subtly different since their conversation about blood types. She seemed more guarded, less spontaneous in their interactions. When he asked casual questions about her day or her past, her answers felt carefully constructed. Marcus realized that his perfect family, the foundation of his entire adult life, might be built on a lie. The possibility was devastating, but he knew he had to find out the truth. Marcus knew he needed definitive answers, but he also dreaded what he might discover. After several sleepless nights, he made the difficult decision to arrange for paternity testing. He researched discrete laboratories that offered confidential DNA testing and found one that would accept samples without requiring all parties to be present. The hardest part was collecting samples from the twins without their knowledge. He felt like he was betraying their trust, but he told himself that he needed to know the truth for everyone's sake. During their regular evening routine, he managed to collect hair samples from their brushes and save them in separate envelopes. His own sample was easy enough to provide, but he struggled with whether to test Sarah as well. Part of him hoped that if he could prove that Ethan was biologically his son, all of his doubts and suspicions would disappear. But another part of him feared that testing might only confirm his worst fears. Marcus submitted the samples to the laboratory on a Friday afternoon, and they told him results would be available within a week. Those 7 days felt like the longest of his life. He tried to maintain normal interactions with his family, but everything felt strained and artificial. During family dinner conversations, Marcus found himself memorizing details about his children's faces, their voices, their habits. If Ethan wasn't his biological son, would these precious memories become painful reminders of deception? Would he be able to love this child the same way once he knew the truth? Emma seemed to sense that something was wrong. She was always intuitive, picking up on emotional undercurrents that others missed. Several times during that week, she asked Marcus if he was feeling okay, or if something was bothering him at work. "You seem sad, Daddy," she said one evening as he tucked her into bed. "Is everything all right?" Marcus's heart broke a little at her concern. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," he lied, kissing her forehead. "Daddy's just been thinking about some work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." But Emma's question haunted him. Even if the tests revealed difficult truths about Ethan's parentage, Emma was still his daughter. She shouldn't have to suffer because of adult problems and mistakes. Whatever happened, Marcus knew he had to protect both children from the fallout of his discoveries. On the following Friday, Marcus received an email notification that his results were ready. He sat in his car in the laboratory parking lot, staring at his phone screen. Once he accessed those results, there would be no going back. His life would be divided forever into before and after this moment. With trembling hands, he logged into the secure portal and downloaded the PDF report. The scientific language was dense, but the summary was clear enough. Emma was confirmed to be his biological daughter with 99.9% certainty. But Ethan showed no genetic markers indicating a paternal relationship with Marcus. Marcus sat in stunned silence, even though part of him had been preparing for this outcome. Seeing it in black and white made it real in a way that his suspicions never had. Ethan, the boy he had raised and loved for 10 years, was not his biological son. The implications hit him in waves. Sarah had been unfaithful during their marriage. She had allowed him to believe that Ethan was his child for an entire decade. Every birthday celebration, every proud moment, every expression of love had been based on a fundamental lie. But even as anger and betrayal washed over him, Marcus realized something that surprised him. Looking at Ethan's name on the report didn't make him love the boy any less. This child had been his son in every way that mattered for 10 years. Ethan had never done anything wrong, and he deserved the same love and protection he had always received. Marcus drove home slowly, his mind racing with questions about what to do next. Should he confront Sarah immediately? Should he demand to know who Ethan's biological father was? Should he contact a lawyer to understand his legal rights and responsibilities? As he pulled into his driveway, he could see his family through the living room window. Sarah was reading on the couch while Emma and Ethan played a board game on the floor. They looked peaceful and happy, completely unaware that their world was about to change forever. Marcus sat in his car for several more minutes trying to gather the courage to go inside and face the woman who had deceived him for so long. He knew that once he walked through that door and confronted Sarah with the truth, nothing would ever be the same for any of them. Marcus waited until the twins were asleep before approaching Sarah. He found her in their bedroom, preparing for the night by applying lotion to her hands. For a moment, he watched her familiar routine and remembered all the years they had shared. This space, this life, these intimate moments. "We need to talk," Marcus said quietly, closing the door behind him. Sarah looked up, and something in his tone must have alerted her because her expression immediately became guarded. "What's wrong?" she asked. Marcus pulled out the printed DNA results and placed them on the dresser between them. "I had paternity tests done," he said simply. The color drained from Sarah's face. She stared at the papers without touching them, her hands frozen in the act of closing the lotion bottle. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Marcus, I can explain," Sarah finally whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. "Emma is my daughter," Marcus continued, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. "But Ethan isn't my son. You've let me believe he was mine for 10 years. Sarah sank onto the edge of the bed, her composure crumbling. Tears began streaming down her face, but Marcus felt no sympathy. He had cried his own tears in the car, and now he needed answers. "Who is his father?" Marcus asked. Sarah's crying intensified, and she struggled to speak through her sobs. "It was David," she finally managed. "David Chen from my work. It only happened a few times right around the time I got pregnant. I wasn't sure, but then when Ethan was born and started looking less like you as he grew older, I suspected." Marcus remembered David Chen. He was a colleague from Sarah's marketing firm, someone Marcus had met at company parties over the years. He was married with his own family, and Marcus had never suspected there was anything between him and Sarah. "Does he know?" Marcus asked. Sarah shook her head. "I never told him. His wife was pregnant at the same time I was, and I didn't want to destroy his family. I thought maybe if I just never said anything, it would be okay." "Okay?" Marcus's voice rose despite his efforts to stay calm. "You thought it would be okay? To lie to me for 10 years? To let me raise another man's child while thinking he was mine? I love you," Sarah said desperately. "I love our family. What happened with David meant nothing. It was a mistake, and I regretted it immediately. But by the time I realized Ethan might not be yours, we were already a family. I couldn't bear to destroy that." Marcus felt a bitter laugh escape him. "So instead you decided to destroy it now? Did you think I would never find out? That Ethan would never ask questions about his medical history or his heritage?" Sarah had no answer. She continued crying, occasionally trying to reach for Marcus, but he moved away from her touch. The woman he had loved and trusted for over a decade was a stranger to him now. "I need to know everything," Marcus said. "How long were you involved with him? Are there other lies I should know about?" Through her tears, Sarah told him about the affair. It had lasted about 3 months, happening during a time when she and Marcus were having some relationship difficulties. She insisted that it had ended before she knew she was pregnant and that David had no idea about Ethan's possible parentage. "I chose you," Sarah said repeatedly. "I chose our marriage and our family. I ended things with David immediately when I realized what I was risking." But Marcus couldn't get past the deception. Even if the affair had been brief, the lie had continued every single day for 10 years. Every time he had looked at Ethan with pride and love, every time he had introduced him as "my son," every time he had felt grateful for his beautiful family, Sarah had known it was based on a falsehood. "What about Ethan?" Marcus asked. "He deserves to know who his real father is. He deserves to have a relationship with his biological family." Sarah's crying intensified. "Please don't tell him," she begged. "He's just a child. He loves you and you love him. Why does biology have to matter more than the relationship you've built?" Marcus realized that Sarah still didn't understand the magnitude of what she had done. She seemed to think that love could somehow erase the betrayal and deception. But trust, once broken so completely, couldn't be rebuilt with good intentions. "I need time to think," Marcus said finally. "I can't be in this room with you right now." He gathered some clothes and toiletries and prepared to sleep in the guest room. As he reached the door, Sarah called out to him one more time. "Marcus, please. We can work through this. We have too much history to throw it all away." But Marcus knew that their history was now tainted by the lies that had been woven through it. He wasn't sure if anything could be salvaged from the wreckage of his shattered trust. The following weeks were the most difficult of Marcus's life. He continued living in the house but maintained emotional distance from Sarah while trying to act normally around the twins. Every interaction felt forced and painful, but he was determined to protect Emma and Ethan from the adult drama surrounding them. Marcus found himself studying Ethan with new eyes, looking for traces of David Chen in the boy's features. Now that he knew the truth, some resemblances seemed obvious. Ethan had David's compact build and quick smile. His mathematical abilities, which Marcus had always been proud to claim, likely came from David's engineering background. But what surprised Marcus was that this knowledge didn't diminish his love for Ethan. The boy was still the same sweet, energetic child who had hugged him every day for 10 years. Biology might not connect them, but their emotional bond was real and strong. The hardest part was watching Ethan interact with him normally, completely unaware that everything had changed. When Ethan asked for help with homework or wanted to play catch in the backyard, Marcus participated fully, but he felt like he was acting in a play where only he knew the script had been rewritten. After 2 weeks of internal struggle, Marcus made his decision. He contacted David Chen and arranged to meet him for coffee, away from both of their families. David was surprised by the request, but agreed to the meeting. When Marcus showed David the DNA results, the other man's reaction was one of shock and disbelief. David had suspected nothing during all these years, and learning that he had a son he had never known about was overwhelming. "What do you want me to do?" David asked, his voice shaky. "My wife doesn't know about the affair. My own children have no idea they have a half-brother." Marcus had thought about this extensively. "Ethan deserves to know his biological heritage," he said. "But how we handle this affects a lot of innocent people. I think we need to involve counselors and figure out the best way to help him understand his situation." David agreed, though he was clearly terrified about the impact on his own family. They decided to work together to find professional guidance on how to navigate this complex situation. Marcus also contacted a family lawyer to understand his legal rights and responsibilities. He learned that since he was listed on Ethan's birth certificate and had been acting as the boy's father for 10 years, he had legal standing to continue in that role regardless of biological connections. The conversation with the twins was the most difficult one Marcus had ever had. He and Sarah sat them down together and explained that there were some complicated adult issues that they needed to understand. They kept the explanation simple and age-appropriate, focusing on the fact that sometimes families are more complex than they initially appear. Emma, with her intuitive nature, seemed to grasp the emotional weight of the situation even if she didn't fully understand all the details. She immediately moved to comfort Ethan, who was confused and upset by the revelation that David was his biological father. "Does this mean Dad doesn't love me anymore?" Ethan asked through his tears. Marcus pulled his son into a tight hug. "I will always love you," he said firmly. "You are my son in every way that matters. Having another man's DNA doesn't change 10 years of bedtime stories, baseball games, and hugs. Nothing will ever change how much you mean to me." Over the following months, the family worked with counselors to navigate their new reality. David gradually built a relationship with Ethan, but it was awkward and complicated. Ethan was curious about his biological father, but made it clear that Marcus was still his real dad in his mind. Sarah and Marcus began marriage counseling, but the trust between them had been too severely damaged. Despite their history and their shared love for the children, Marcus found that he could not forgive the decade of deception. They eventually decided to separate and pursue divorce. The divorce process was difficult, but handled with as much care for the children as possible. Marcus maintained custody rights for both twins, and they continued to live primarily with him. Sarah moved to a nearby apartment, and the children spent regular time with both parents. David's wife eventually learned about the situation, and while their marriage survived, it required significant counseling and healing. David's other children slowly accepted Ethan as their half-brother, though the relationships remained complicated. 2 years after the discovery, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed. The perfect family he had believed in was gone, but he had found something different and perhaps more honest in its place. Emma and Ethan both thrived despite the upheaval, and their bond with Marcus remained strong. Marcus learned that families are not defined solely by genetics or even by the circumstances of their creation. They are built through daily acts of love, commitment, and care. While the truth had been painful to discover, It had also freed them from the foundation of lies that had threatened to poison their relationships. Ethan continued to call Marcus Dad and spent most of his time at Marcus's house. He had developed a cordial relationship with David, but it was clear that Marcus remained his primary father figure. The boy seemed to understand instinctively that love and commitment matter more than DNA. As Marcus tucked his children into bed, each night, he realized that despite all the pain and betrayal, he had emerged with something valuable. He had learned that real family bonds can survive even the most devastating revelations, and that truth, however painful, is ultimately more precious than comfortable lies.